So the PlayStation 5 has been cracked wide open. And I don't mean just a simple little hack. We're talking about one of the biggest security crises in Sony's entire history. And their reaction to it? Well, it's been kind of baffling. Today, we're unpacking a wild story that involves leaked master keys, a really old Star Wars game, and a multi-million-dollar question.
And it all really boils down to this single question. Is Sony just the victim of a massive, catastrophic security failure, or is there some kind of hidden strategy behind their super slow and, let's be honest, strange response? Let's dive right in.
Okay, so let's start with the absolute core of the problem here. A catastrophic and, get this, permanent security flaw right at the very heart of the PlayStation 5.
Now, to really get the scale of this, we need to talk about the boot ROM. You can think of it like the ignition system in your car. It's the very first piece of code that runs when you power the console on, and its whole job is to check and verify everything else that comes after it. This thing is the absolute bedrock of the console security. It's what's known as the root of trust, and it's physically burned into the main processor. You can't change it.
And here is what is truly terrifying for Sony. This damage is permanent. When the secret keys to that boot ROM got leaked online, it wasn't some software bug they could just patch with an update. No way. These keys are physically fused into the silicon. The only way to actually fix this is to manufacture completely new chips, which means every single PS5 that's out there right now is and always will be vulnerable.
So, okay, hackers have the master keys, but they still need a way to get into the house, right? And their secret weapon, their way in, well, it came from the most unlikely place you could possibly imagine.
And honestly, this just shows you how creative hackers can be. It's pretty amazing. They found a flaw in this niche Star Wars racing game from 2002 that got a limited re-release on a PS4 disc. By loading up a malicious save file, they could crash the game in a very specific way, which created a tiny opening. From that opening, they used those leaked boot ROM keys to hijack the whole system, get total control, and start running their own custom software.
And you better believe the market reacted instantly. I mean, just look at this. A forgotten game that you could get for maybe $20 suddenly becomes this golden ticket. The price just skyrocketed. We're talking over 3,000%, with copies selling for $500, sometimes even more. This wasn't just a digital problem anymore. It created a literal real-world gold rush for a piece of plastic. But let's be super clear here, this isn't a total free-for-all just yet. The exploit has some pretty major limitations. You absolutely need a PS5 with the disk drive, you need that specific and now very expensive game, and your console has to be on an older software version. Oh, and here's the big one. If you ever connect that console to the internet, Sony will know and your account is toast.
So the console is cracked, but this, my friends, is where the story gets really strange. With their security fundamentally broken, you would expect Sony to act fast, right? Decisively. Yeah, they didn't.
The central mystery is this. Sony detects these hacked consoles, but instead of banning them on the spot, they wait a full 30 days. Why would they do that? Well, officially, they say it's for thorough investigations. But the hacker community? They have a very different theory. They believe Sony is letting these users stay on the network just long enough to buy games, subscribe to PS Plus, and maybe grab a new controller before finally dropping the ban hammer.
And listen, we're not talking about a small number of accounts here. In just one recent month, Sony suspended 93,000 hacked accounts, and every single one of them was allowed to keep playing online for 30 days after Sony's systems had already flagged them.
So what does that 30-day grace period actually mean in dollars and cents? Well, if we do some conservative math, let's say each of those 93,000 users bought just a couple of games or a subscription, we're looking at a potential revenue of over $18 million for Sony. That's money they would not have made if they just banned those accounts immediately.
This delay, combined with all that potential revenue, has just fueled a full-blown conspiracy theory that maybe, just maybe, Sony is actually benefiting from this so-called security disaster.
So you see, the crucial point here isn't just one single thing, it's a whole collection of suspicious signs. You've got the 1-month ban delay, you have the super slow pace of patching other known bugs, you have lingering questions about how these supposedly ultra-secure keys leaked in the first place, and there's been a noticeable lack of any really aggressive public legal action. It all adds up to a picture that a lot of people find very suspect.
And then there's this. In the quarters right after the news of this permanent hack broke, PS5 sales didn't drop, they actually jumped significantly.
Now look, we all know correlation isn't causation, but if you're building a case for this theory, this is some pretty compelling evidence that the ability to hack a console might actually drive sales.
And this feeling isn't just coming from people on internet forums. Here's a quote from a cybersecurity professional, someone with over a decade of experience. They basically point out that from a security perspective, Sony's response is so unusual that it makes them believe it might be intentional. It's either incompetence or it's a strategy, and they're leaning towards strategy.
So where does all this go from here? I mean, this is that classic cat and mouse game, but with the cat's main weapon now broken, the mice are getting a whole lot bolder. So let's take a look at what's probably coming next.
Okay, first, a really quick but important distinction. What exists right now is what we call a jailbreak. It lets you run some unofficial stuff, but the core system is still Sony's. The ultimate goal for hackers, though, the holy grail, is custom firmware, or CFW. That means completely ripping out and replacing Sony's operating system with their own, giving them total, permanent control over the hardware.
Now, based on the progress we're seeing, the community has kind of mapped out a likely path forward. We're in this homebrew stage right now. The next big steps will be running actual PS5 games from hard drives, and then, probably within the next year or so, we could see the first stable release of a full custom firmware.
And really, the key takeaway from all the technical evidence is this. Because that fundamental breach cannot be fixed with a software update, a full system takeover by the hacking community now feels, well, inevitable. It's really no longer a question of if they'll succeed, but simply a question of when.
And all of this leaves Sony in a completely impossible position. They're fighting a security war that they fundamentally cannot win. If they crack down too hard, they risk really angering their user base. But if they do nothing, the game publishers who rely on their platform's security are going to be furious. So what do you do when you're caught between a security disaster on one hand and an unexpected sales boom on the other? What is the right move? That's the question we'll leave you with.